So she actually, from the minute I thought she was a mother, and she was trying to escape. She wasn't sure what you were right after.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Mismor LeDavid, Adonai roi lo echsar, binot yarbitzeni, al mei menuchot yanachaleni, nafshi shovev, yanacheni v'magle tzedek lema'an shemo, gam ki helech begitz al mavet, lo yirara ki ata imadi, shiftecha umishantecha hema yenachamuni. Ta'aroch lefanai shulchan neged sorirai dishanta bashamen roshi kosiri vaya ach tov chesed yirdifuni kol yamei chayai vishaveti beveit Adonai leorech yamim. I've chanted for you the words of our 23rd Psalm. On these days that are challenging, when our hearts are sad, on days when we are seeking comfort and strength, we often turn to the psalmist. And so I ask you to recite these words with me at this time. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. In the rising of the sun and in its going down, we will remember her. In the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter, we will remember her. In the opening buds and in the rebirth of spring, we will remember her. In the blueness of sky and in the warmth of summer, we will remember her. In the rustling of leaves and in the beauty of autumn, we will remember her. In the beginning of the year and when it ends, we will remember her. When we are weary and in need of strength, we will remember her. And when we are lost and sick at heart, we will remember her. When we have joys we yearn to share, we will remember her. So long as we live, she too will live, for she is now a part of us as we remember Margaret H. Weiner. To her children, Ellen, Dan, Karen, also to Lisa, to Daniel, Nancy, and Bill, to her grandchildren, Josh and Zachary, Naomi, Jessica, Alexandra, Sarah, Ben, and Eli, and to the members of the family and to so many cherished friends. We've come together today to remember, but also to celebrate the life of your beloved Margie. Our sages in their wisdom have taught us that birth is a beginning and death a destination, and life is a journey, from childhood to maturity, and from youth to age, from innocence to awareness and ignorance to knowing, from foolishness to discretion, and then, perhaps, to wisdom, from weakness to strength or strength to weakness, and often back again, from health to sickness, and back we pray to health again, from offense to forgiveness, from loneliness to love, from joy to gratitude, from pain to compassion, and grief to understanding, from fear to faith, from defeat to defeat to defeat, until looking backward or ahead we see that victory lies not at some high place along the way, but in having made the journey, stage by stage, a sacred pilgrimage. Birth is a beginning and death a destination, and life is a journey, a sacred pilgrimage to life everlasting. Margie's journey of 92 years began in Cleveland. She was born in 1924 to Robert and Florence Handler, and she was the youngest of 3 daughters. Margie, along with her sisters, Ethel and Patsy, both of blessed memory, grew up in Cleveland Heights. The Handler sisters enjoyed a happy childhood. Their father supported the family by collecting monies from the local movie theaters. He did this until he went to work in the flux industry. And their mother was a homemaker, but who also worked to help support the family in selling magazines and world books. Margie was a product of the Cleveland Heights educational system. She attended Roxborough Elementary and Roxborough Junior High School, and she would often share, maybe even brag a little bit to her children, that she was the best rope climber of Roxborough Junior High ever. Margie and her older sisters were active in Junior Hadassah, and the Handlers were a very musical family. Margie, in fact, had perfect pitch. She played piano from the age of 5. She attended Cleveland Heights High School, where she enjoyed a wonderful group of friends, many who grew to be lifelong friends of hers. Following her high school graduation, she matriculated to Flora Stone Mather College, where she studied home economics. She was there 1 year and then transferred to Simmons College in Boston. But one of the most significant moments in her college career occurred in her first year when she was attending a freshman mixer at Western Reserve University. It was at this event that the beautiful Margie Handler met Bert Garfinkel, a young collegiate who came from Glenville, what the Cleveland Heights community would have called perhaps the other side of the tracks. They were both 18 years old, and they dated. They fell in love, and they were married on July 4th, 1945 at Park Synagogue by Rabbi Armin Cohn. In the Jewish wedding ceremony, we have this section called the Sheva Brachot, the 7 wedding blessings. The bride and groom are described as Reim Ahuvim, loving partners. In sitting with Margie's family last night, I came to see this picture of 2 people who were such Reim Ahuvim, loving partners. They were partners in everything that they did. They enjoyed traveling, visited Israel and various parts of Europe. Together they enjoyed their monthly bridge club, and they enjoyed their season tickets to attend concerts at the Cleveland Orchestra. They also loved going to the theater. Margie's sister and brother-in-law, Patsy and Harold, lived in New Jersey, and they'd visit them frequently, and these trips always included a side trip into the city to see a Broadway show. And as a couple, they had so many wonderful friends, many of whom were from the Park Synagogue Young Couples Club. Bert and Margie were also partners in work. When Bert left Garfinkel's shoes and went into the family business on Margie's side, he began to work at Superior Flux. And Margie worked alongside him as a secretary and an office administrator, and she was so sharp and so bright. And as her children told me, her granddaughter Naomi expressed that she had a great mind for numbers. And then when Ellen and Dan and Karen, when the three of you entered into the picture, the Garfinkel family portrait was complete. You shared with me beautiful memories of a mom who was loving, energetic beyond description, meticulous in everything she did, highly organized, talented. In Yiddish we might say goldene hands. Her hands were so skilled in sewing, in crafting things, in her gourmet cooking. She made a beautiful home for her children, for her husband, the home that they lived in Pepper Pike. The three of you have memories of wonderful family trips. These were road trips where all five of you would pile into the car and travel across America. One summer, the family took a 6-week camping trip across the country. And I believe, Karen, you mentioned memories you had of seeing your mom light Shabbos candles that were set on a picnic table at Lake Mead. And it shows that wherever she was, at home or even traveling, Margie's Judaism was so very important to her. You have memories of belonging to Temple Emmanuel, attending religious school there, and seeing your parents and how much they enjoyed being involved in temple life. There was the year your father was serving as president of Temple Emmanuel. And it was during this time that at the young age of 52, he died so suddenly. 33 years of marriage, a very beautiful marriage, one that was an example to you. A beautiful marriage, a beautiful friendship, a partnership. Now, 2 years after Bert's passing, Margie was introduced to Harry Weiner, a sweet man, and how fortunate she was to have found love a second time. They had a beautiful relationship, and because of his career, it even took them to Brazil, where they lived for 18 months. And this marriage, which was also filled with love and great friendship, lasted 20 years until the time of his passing in 2001. Dan, you mostly remember your mom as the hostess with the mostess. Through her, you learned how to throw a party. You learned how to entertain friends. You said that she could plan a party, and your sisters agreed to execute a party with military precision. It was remarkable to you always how the food would come out all at the same time. She had an energy. She was fun and organized and upbeat, and people loved to come over to your family's home. Karen, you also mentioned her incredible energy. Sometimes she would call you on the phone. She'd describe to you what you thought was at least a full day. She'd tell you something like, well, I woke up and I cleaned the house. I drove to the west side to purchase some special fabric. I ran several errands. Then I worked on a sewing project and baked 2 batches of cookies. And then I realized, it's lunch. I should probably have something to eat. And this wasn't unusual. This is how she was. All of this before lunch, every day. Daniel, her son-in-law, you noticed her talents, and you remarked that she never wasted a moment of her time or her talent. Some of us are given gifts. All of us are given gifts. But we don't always We don't always cultivate those talents and gifts. Not your mother-in-law. She made every single moment count. That's what you told me. Her granddaughter Naomi described a grandmother that was always so sweet, so thoughtful, a grandmother who did things for everyone. She made things for you, prepared things. You recalled the special one-on-one lunches that all the grandchildren were privileged to have with their grandmother. The best part, wherever she took you to lunch, you were allowed to eat anything, even the things your parents said you weren't allowed to have. So she spoiled you. Sleepovers were always fun. And also, Naomi, you described her as very competent. You recalled a time when you were living in San Francisco and she was coming out to visit you. This wasn't that long ago, and she knew there would be a tremendous amount of walking in this very hilly terrain. So being the organized and focused person that she always was, she decided to begin training for her trip to San Francisco. She would get on her treadmill and walk 1 mile a day in order to be in shape for this trip. She was so very determined. She was a person who practiced tikkun olam. She was concerned about her world and her community. And in practicing this act of giving back and repairing our world, she served as president of the Brandeis Women's Committee. She was an active and dedicated life member of Hadassah. She became involved in the College of Jewish Studies Women's Association. She participated in a Bible study group, and in her adult years continued learning Hebrew. Margie was an avid reader and was especially fascinated with political nonfiction. And this woman lived independently in her home on Cedar Road up until 2001. She moved to the Four Seasons in 2011, and her last few years she spent living at Stone Gardens. We're taught by our tradition that words which come from our heart enter directly to the heart. And we have 2 members of the family who have words in their heart that they want to share with us today. And so first, I'd like to call on her daughter, Ellen.
During the last few years of Margie's life, as she slid deeper and deeper into dementia, we were often caught up in dealing with her changing needs, and it became harder to remember our real mother, the person she used to be. We would look at each other and say, "Who is that woman?" Now I remember. She was the youngest of Florence Handler's 3 daughters, Ethel, Patsy, and Margie. Like their mother, these 3 were outspoken, opinionated, forthright, honest women. With our mother, you always knew exactly what she thought. Our mother was perfect. We know because she told us all the time. But she kept proving it with her perfect cakes, her perfect meals, her perfect sewing, her perfect piano playing, her perfectly clean house. One summer, my Aunt Patsy sent my cousin Caneret to Cleveland for Aunt Margie's housekeeping course. We learned, Caneret and I together, we learned the proper way to clean bathrooms, fold laundry, and iron. At the end of the summer, Caneret left with a certificate of completion and the knowledge that if Aunt Margie came to visit, the bathroom had better be clean. Years later, when she was recovering from knee surgery and needed help with spring cleaning, she asked me to wipe out her linen closet. I took one look at the perfectly folded towels and knew I could not take them out, wipe the shelves, and replace them as perfectly as she had placed them there. Mother was still sewing and adding to her elegant wardrobe until well into her 80s. Many of these items are now part of the Ursuline College Historic Costume Study Collection. In addition, she spent countless mornings mending our clothes, and one Hanukkah she made a complete wardrobe for Naomi's Barbie doll, including a Stone Martin fur coat matching her own. Margie was a kind and generous friend. She made padded armrests for her friend Marcella's wheelchair. She baked cookies and her perfect sponge cake to take to friends or when she made a condolence call. She baked hundreds of cookies for her granddaughter Jessica's bat mitzvah. She began baking cookies for our cousin family reunion vacations. She would calculate how many people would be there, how many days we would be there, how many meals we would eat, and therefore how many cookies per person she had to bake. And every cookie was perfectly packed. She began playing the piano when she was 5 years old and never stopped. When she moved into Stone Gardens, her piano came with her, and she practiced 5 or 6 hours a day. Staff and residents would stand outside and listen as she practiced, always aiming for perfection. In addition to her many talents, she was fun and quick to laugh. On her frequent visits, she swept into our house, bringing our mending, a pumpkin pie, or her apron and rubber gloves for pickle making, leaving a trail of warmth, joy, and tea rose perfume. She loved spending time with all of us and our friends. Although Margie expected perfection of herself, she was slightly less demanding of us and our families. We always knew she loved us, even though we weren't perfect.
Thank you, Ellen. I'd also like to call on Margie's grandson, Josh.
It's easier to be the grandson. I'll be less heavy. Okay. I know tie-dye isn't traditional funeral wear, but since I made this with my grandmother, it seemed appropriate for today. For 25 years, I rode my bicycle to where my grandmother lived. Sometimes the visits were dates to work on sewing projects. When we stopped for lunch, we ate soup, salad, or a sandwich that Grandma had already prepared in the morning. Every lunch was perfectly made, with the richest, fullest fat dressing available. And as surely as she had a fork or a handmade placemat, she had homemade cookies for dessert. Since one meal prepared by my grandmother a week brought me so much pleasure, it's almost beyond imagining that growing up, my mother and her siblings enjoyed 3 Margie meals a day, including their brown bag lunches through high school. Margie sewed for the joy of making each thing, as do I. We never discussed a formal ethos, but we share a drive to complete projects and make repairs. Once, before I learned to sew, I asked Grandma to make a second pocket on a pair of heavy military pants. When she returned them, I had to look closely to figure out which of the pleated flat pockets with hidden buttons was original and which was the one that she had made. And as I looked at them, I noticed that both the pockets were darker inside, and she said, "Oh, I lined them with denim in case you want to put tools in them." In the clothing department, my grandma gave me 2 gifts. The first is the technique of cutting and sewing. I can picture clearly her thin freckled skin on her hands as she eased pieces of fabric together. The second gift is the tradition and culture of sewing, which impart the value of making clothes and connect me to a trade. It seems fitting that the morning Margie died, I was at a farmer's market in Maine selling the wool hats I make with her sewing machine. Thank you for coming.
Before we conclude our service, just a couple brief announcements to share with you. Following our service here, the Friends will be receiving visitors immediately at the home on Churchill Boulevard. The address is 4310. They'll be observing Shiva until 5 p.m. this afternoon, taking a brief break, and then Shiva will resume this evening from 7 until 9 p.m. Also, on Tuesday and Wednesday, they'll receive visitors from 2 until 4 p.m. and again from 7 until 9. If anyone here wishes to make a contribution in memory of Margie, the family has suggested that you might consider the Alzheimer's Association or Montefiore. At this time, as you're able, I would like to ask you to rise for the memorial prayer. אל מלא רחמים, שוכן במרומים, עמסי מנוחה נכונה תחת כנפי השכינה, במלאות קדושים וטהורים, כזוהר הרקיע מסעירים. את נשמת מרגולית בת ראובן, שהלכה לעולמה בגן עדן, תחי מנוחתה. אנא בהרחמים אסתירך, בסתר כנפיך לעולמים, ותתרור בצררך עם את נשמתה. אדוני הוא נחלתה, ותנוח בשלום, על משכבה ונאמר Amen. O merciful God, who dwells on high and who is full of compassion, grant perfect rest beneath the shelter of your divine presence among the holy and pure, who shine as the brightness of the firmament, to our dear departed Margaret H. Weiner, who has gone to her eternal home. May Margie's soul be bound up in the bonds of eternal life, and grant that her memory inspire all of us to noble and consecrated living. Amen. Friends, we are so privileged to have a dear friend of their family joining us today, Rabbi Truboff from Cedar Sinai, who will help us conclude our service. Thank you, Rabbi.
Before we conclude, I'll recite a chapter of Psalms, following which the family will say Mourner's Kaddish. Ashrei האיש אשר לא הלך בעצת רשעים ובדרך חטאים לא עמד ובמושב לצים לא ישב כי אם בתורת אדוני חפצו ותורתו יגע יומם ולילה והיה כעד שתול על פלגי מים אשר פיו ייתן ביתו ועליהו לא ייבול בכל אשר יעשה יצליח לא כן הרשעים כי מקומות אשר תדפנו רוח על כן לא קמו רשעים במשפט וחטאים בעדת צדיקים כי יודע אדוני דרך צדיקים ודרך רשעים טובים.
We pray that God, who makes peace in a high place, send peace and comfort to you, the mourners, to Israel, and to all humankind. Amen. On behalf of Margie's family, we thank you for joining us on this sad and important day.